Hello YouTube, I hope you're having a fabulous day. It is winter break, and so I was like, let me catch up on my videos. I was gonna do two topics today, and it's Frederick Douglas Academy. Frederick Douglass. So Frederick Douglass Academy, obviously they named it after him. So Frederick Douglass, I'm going to be talking about Frederick Douglass today, and the Amistad judge. I specifically want to talk about the Amistad judge because a lot of people don't get the credit that they deserve, and that's the whole point of this Black History series. Is I'm going to be talking about people that you don't really know about. Maya Angelou, she was my inspiration, so I had to talk about her. I know a lot of people know about her, but I just wanted to remind y'all, of that. And yeah, so briefly, I just wanted to be an encouragement to others. I'm not going to give the devil any airtime, but I just want to encourage other people who have channels. If you see negative comments underneath your thing, just delete them. And I don't necessarily have to say it, but I spread positivity. There's nothing on here that's, once in a blue, I've talked about previous relationships, and I understand maybe that could draw a negative comment. But things like going to church and somebody's preaching and the negative comments, I deleted all those comments. I'm not gonna respond. So just to anybody who thinks that this is that type of channel, it's not. So I don't go back and forth with people. Your comment will be deleted. I'm not gonna respond to it. There was a person who went off topic and wasn't even talking about the topic at hand. The topic at hand was, ladies, would you date a man that's celibate? And the person started talking about single moms and nobody's gonna want you, and you think somebody's gonna play stepdad and all this stuff that had nothing to do with what I was saying. So I think I responded to that person one time, and then after that I just deleted all their comments. And that's what I do now because I'm old. I'm 35 years old. So I'm not going to go back and forth, because one thing that I've learned is it doesn't matter the situation. People are never going to listen to what you have to say. If their mind is already made up to be negative, that's what it do. Just like I had a former friend. I told y'all he's atheist. So anything negative he would hear on the media about a pastor or a bishop, he believed it. So me telling him, oh, well, this person had free classes, it didn't matter to him. It didn't matter because what it came from was he had a strong hatred for the church. So anything negative he heard about the church, he ran with it. It was like music to his ears, So it's like, I just needed to put the disclaimer out there that anybody who thinks that you're going to put negative comments on it, I have to delete you, because what I start to notice about like Instagram and stuff like that, this isn't Instagram, this is YouTube, but usually one negative comment, if that's not deleted, it starts to spiral out of control, and people will respond based on what somebody else says. So I just wanted to say that. On to the next. Anyway, this is my Black History series, and I'll be talking about Frederick Douglass and the Amistad judge. Now, Frederick Douglass was not only an abolitionist and everything like that. He was born a slave. Yes, he was born a slave, and he was separated from his mother. It's unclear who his father was. It was assumed that the father was the master, but he doesn't really look biracial to me, so I don't really know. I don't know. I guess he just assumed because he never met his father, but it's unclear who his father was, and the assumption was his father was the master. However, like I said, he doesn't look biracial to me. So it's unclear who his father was. He was separated from his mother when he was 7 years old, and it's similar to the foster care system, because when I was listening to the story on YouTube, I was like, wow, that's what the foster care system is. The number one kids being separated from their parents are unfortunately African American children, and not all of them are abused. Some people, they have issues, so to get back at the parent for something that they did to them, they'll call ACS on them. Depending on what type of social worker you get in the house, that social worker could have a bad day and they're like, you know what, we're removing the children. And that parent has to fight in court to get their child back. In some cases, it's almost impossible. So that's a very sad situation. I was listening to that like, wow, that goes back to slavery time. Children, African American children being separated from their parents. So Frederick Douglass was separated from his mother. His master's wife taught him how to read. And the master told the wife, don't do that, because if you teach him how to read, he won't be a slave. So there's basically a system. So when I hear people say, even people brag about they don't read, you're a slave, because you should always try to read something, even if it's a urban literature. But it's important to read the news. It's important to read educational things, because people who don't read, it shows. It definitely shows. People who don't read, oftentimes they just go with information that's inaccurate, and it's good to find things and research things on your own. Reading is very important. It's not just good just to get a job or something, but reading really opens your mind, and it enhances your mind, and it opens, so you can be more open-minded and understanding. A lot of people that I converse with, they say things that's so like off the wall, and then I'm like, this person probably doesn't read. You never want to get into a space and sound ignorant when you could have just read it online, right? So reading is very important. So they stopped us from reading. We weren't allowed to read. And fast forward to 2025, they're not teaching children how to read in the elementary schools, some schools, right? So it's like history is like low-key repeating itself. And and it's in the public schools, it's not in the charter schools. But right now, it's pretty sad, because it's like, if a child doesn't learn how to read in kindergarten, how are they supposed to function in second and third and fourth grade, right? Yeah. But yeah, so Frederick Douglass, his wife, her name was Anne Murray, and I wanted to briefly talk about her because she plays a very big role in Frederick Douglass's life. So she had 8 siblings. 5 of her siblings were born into slavery and they remained slaves. She was the first, and 4 siblings. Yeah, so Anne Murray played a very big role in Frederick Douglass's life, because she actually held it down, which is very common in Black America. She made sure he got his, so basically, okay, she had 8 siblings, and she was number 5, and the 4 siblings underneath her, they were free, born free, and she was born free. So she was able to get Frederick his freedom, and she worked 2 jobs as a laundress. Like, she did people's laundry and like menial, she did like housework. So with those 2 jobs that she had, she was able to give him money and actually pay his bills. So she plays a very big role in his life, because if it wasn't for her, he probably wouldn't have been able to be free. And if he wasn't able to be free, he wouldn't have been the man that he was became. And so I was reading on Wikipedia, and it said how he would leave her home when he would do his speaking engagements because she wasn't as educated as him. The nerve, right? She supported him. Like, he wouldn't be educated if it wasn't for her, because she actually helped him be free. And so what he did with that is he went further along. So he would leave her home. He never brought her along for speaking engagements. And I can imagine how that felt as a woman. Like, wow, I helped you and you're not even. And then my son told me Frederick Douglass has a book out. I didn't get to read it, but there's no mention of her in the book. He doesn't mention this is the woman who helped me be free or any of that. So it was just sad to me, because it's like, fast forward to 2025, you have men like that. You help them and then they just forget you. So yeah, but she is a very important role. We talk about Frederick Douglass all the time. I had to give his wife some respect. You know, every great man, there's always some woman behind him. You know, Frederick Douglass, if it wasn't for his master's wife, he wouldn't have learned how to read. And if it wasn't for Frederick Douglass's his own wife, he wouldn't have freedom. So I think that's so important, you know. Yeah. And so Frederick Douglass had a second wife. So Anne Murray, she passed away. And so he got married to a woman named Helen. And Helen looks white, but it's unclear as to specifics, but she does look white. And so Helen was able to go, she was more known. A lot of people think that he just married her, but he actually had a wife before her. Anne Murray had passed away, and a year and a half later he got married to Helen. And so him and Helen were married for a while. And yeah, you know, so Frederick Douglass like never paid homage to his first wife. I find that very interesting, but it is what it is. He was an abolitionist. He played a very vital role in the Civil War. He actually felt like it was good for them to participate in the Civil War, because the Civil War was about slavery. It was the people who believed in celery. It was the people who believed in slavery versus the people who didn't. And so he thought it was important for them to participate, to fight for freedom, right? So, yes. They were married for 11 years until he died. So they were, till death did them part as well. She died. This is Helen Pitts Douglass, his second wife. She died in 1903 at the age of 65, and she was buried by him. There was no funeral memorial for her, and she was buried in Rochester, New York. So on to the next person. The Amistad judge. Yes, so the movie Amistad came out around, I want to say 1997 or 1998. As a kid, I didn't like it. It was just, I was never a fan of like slave movies at all. Even as an adult, the only slave movie I really enjoy is like Harriet Tubman, The Feast of All Saints. I'm not really and you know, so gory and sad to watch. But the Amistad is such a historical time. It's not just the name of a movie. It actually really happened, which I didn't know till recently. So I wanted to talk about the judge, because you had a lot of white people who played a very significant and important role in slavery as far as abolition was concerned. So I just wanted to give this man his flowers, even though he's passed on, and educate my subscribers on this man. Now, the judge in the movie Amistad, at the very end, he is presumed to be a Christian, and he's praying to God, asking him, what shall I do? And so you have to understand that this was a time that slavery was okay. This was a time when many white people were brainwashed into believing that Africans were bad people. You have to understand, they were told that we were serving false gods, which in certain parts of Africa we were. So they were brainwashed into thinking that Africans were bad people, that they deserved this type of treatment. And so you have to understand him as a white man, his position in society, right? So as a judge, and he allowed the slaves to be freed, it cost him his job, right? So this was a very tough decision that people made. Many people who stuck up for the right thing, but they paid for it in other ways. And this particular judge's name was Andrew T. Judson. Now, he was he was born 1784 and died March 17th, 1853. United States representative from Connecticut and the United States District Judge of the United States District Court of the District of Connecticut. So another fast fact I wanted to put out there, New York was a free state earlier than Connecticut. So slave ships were still coming into Connecticut. Even though Connecticut is very close to New York, slave ships were still coming into Connecticut. So just a little fast fact for that. When Amistad happened, it was the United States versus Amistad, right? He ruled the enslaved captives be released and returned to Africa, right? So there was something that I watched on YouTube. It was in cartoon form that they were supposed to go back to Africa, but some of the ships had went back to Connecticut. So they were supposed to go back to Africa, but they tricked them and they went back to Connecticut. So Judson actually had limited schooling and read law in 1806. He took the bar and entered private practice in Vermont. He continued private practice in Cadbury, Connecticut. That's very interesting. So it just shows you that back then it was very different. You didn't need, because now you obviously need law school, you need many years. And so back then they didn't have much education, but it says right here, he had limited schooling, which is believable. And he read law, I guess a few law books, and became a judge. You didn't need much education back then, So he was a member of the Connecticut House of Representatives in 1816. And from 1822 to 25. He was the state's attorney for Windham County. During this time, Martin Van Buren was president. And so I wanted to shed light about this man. Martin Van Buren was a statesman and anti-slavery leader. I didn't know that. So if you live in the New York City area, there is a school named after him, Martin Van Buren, and he was against slavery. That's cool, because back then that wasn't the popular thing. You had abolitionists, but like I said, it was frowned upon to be an abolitionist. And I had to read up a little bit on I had to read up on Judson. And when he ruled and sent the slaves back to Africa, people were shocked because he actually was for slavery. So there's a scene in the movie where he's talking to God and he's in prayer. So I guess he has an epiphany to realize, like, this is wrong. They're human beings. And a lot of people were conflicted because difference in family, the way they were raised. No, you need to be, slavery is supposed to be da da da. Slavery is right, but in their heart, they knew it was wrong. And I think that's what I love about this story, is that this is a white man, folks, right? Picture a time when you are in position, people have to do what you say. Back then, there was no jury, there was no any of that. Later on, you get juries. But in this particular case, there was no jury. It's just the judge. He could have said, y'all stay in slaves. But he said no, right? And he ordered them to go back to, and the scene in Amistad is so emotional because, he's saying, give us free, the main character, and he's in chains, and he's like, give us free, let us free. And when they win, they say in their language, they're so happy. And it's like, everybody's looking at the judge like, what are you doing? Like, just put yourself in his shoes. Like, he didn't have to do that. He's a white man. He's a judge. He could have said, no, stay slaves. But he had a conversation with God. He had an epiphany and a consciousness to let them go. So I think that's like the best part of the movie, because it just shows you that people could be raised a certain way, but we all have a consciousness to do the right thing. And those are the three people that I wanted to talk about: Frederick Douglass, and Murray, his first wife, and the Amistad judge. If you want to learn more about Amistad, the movie should be free, I believe. It should be on YouTube, but it's just a beautiful movie, and it shows the ending is what's the powerful thing. The judge, and a lot of people don't know his name, but it's Andrew T. Judson. He freed the slaves and let them go back home to Africa. And those are my thoughts.